So another big weekend of championship football ahead of us this weekend with plenty of provincial semi-finals across Munster, Connacht and Ulster. So look ahead to this weekend's action. I am delighted to be joined by former Leitrim player Emlyn Mulligan. Emlyn, how are things on this Thursday morning?
Yeah, not too bad. Just I said only out of the cot there now after a night of night feeds. So yeah, listen, all's good and well.
Yeah, I was on night shift myself working in a betting industry, so obviously was patiently watching all the extra time in Wembley yesterday evening for that game as well.
Yeah, listen, I watched it myself last night. Obviously, going by Twitter, and it was a lot of disappointed Irish people, I suppose, with the result. But as we said there before we came on there, I think England definitely deserved the result. And listen, it keeps us entertained for another couple of days. Looking forward to an England-Italy final on Sunday night.
Yeah, and by the time that final rolls around, we'll obviously be a step closer to knowing. We'll know obviously the makeup of both the Munster and Connacht finals, and we'll be a step closer to knowing we'll know all the semi-final lineup. In fact, in Ulster, we might start with that game in Connacht, obviously because it's the game closest to your heart, the meeting of Mayo and Leitrim in McHale Park, Castlebar on Sunday. Obviously, playing for the winners are playing for the right to meet Galway in the final after their victory against Roscommon last week. Suppose look, it's a big ask really ahead of Leitrim coming down to Castlebar on Sunday.
Yeah, it's a massive ask, surely. I suppose, listen, all we can go on is form. And I suppose last year's game, Leitrim against Mayo, played them in Park Sean there. And I suppose it was a torrential day. And I suppose with the COVID and everything, it was a very stop-start year. And in fairness to Leitrim, they put up a good fight against Mayo that day. I think got within 10 points. And people took a lot. I suppose Leitrim supporters took plenty of positives from it. But going forward into this year, I suppose they had a very disappointing league campaign in terms of being defeated here by Sligo. Obviously, a big hammer against Louth, and then I think it was a 1 point defeat then to Antrim. But yeah, listen, they're going in against a top team, be it without Cillian O'Connor. But we're after seeing the damage Mayo still can do even without him there against Sligo here, And I just think in terms of the way them teams have developed, and especially even in the last 6-8 months, you can see the strength and condition, the difference in levels of strength Mayo had even over Sligo. And that's why I'd be comparing Leitrim to be kind of on a level par with Sligo in terms of their ability and that. So, yeah, listen, it's a massive ask, and especially be it in the McHale Park. I think it's live in RT as well, which probably won't help the factor as well for even young Mayo players coming in getting starts that are they're going to want to impress on the national stage. So, what are we looking at? Maybe a moral victory, I suppose. Maybe likes of Wexford there against Dublin give weaker teams, I suppose, a bit of an inspiration. Whereas that if you do sit up rightly, if you do get your own house in order, that you can be competitive for such a length of time in a game. But personally, for me, Mayo, I think no more than everyone else in the country here will be expecting to win heavily.
Just even on that Leitrim point of view, obviously the fact that dropped down to Division 3, they will have aspirations for these challenge for promotion. And as I mentioned, they lost all the games. Some of them were kind of heavy defeats. But I suppose the scoreline doesn't tell the whole story in a lot of the games. Obviously, the Antrim game, okay, fair enough, is a dead rubber. But only lose by a point up in Corrigan Park. But the Sligo game, there were 2 points up heading into first half injury time when Aidan Flynn gets sent off to go on to lose by 7. The Louth game, as you said, that probably ended up being a hammering, but it ended up being a second half collapse after they were a point up at half time. Obviously, only scored 3 points second half. So while the scorelines didn't kind of reflect well on Leitrim, the performances there still was positive to take away from what we would regard was a disappointing league campaign.
Yeah, so I suppose the disappointing thing is coming down from Division 3, and I suppose with a bit of expectancy maybe to go back up, and obviously having that bit of a positive performance against Mayo last year in Championship, I suppose a lot of people might have expected a wee bit more. But the one thing Leitrim do have, and I suppose maybe they have a bit more firepower maybe than Sligo, we have a number of very good forwards in Keith Byrne. Dara Rooney's going to his 5th Championship year now, and he's only 22. If Ryan O'Rourke is fit, Evan Sweeney came on again up in Corrigan Park against Antrim and kicked 1-2 or 1-3 in the space of 10 minutes. We have definitely scoring forwards. It's just on the other side of the pitch that we are struggling a bit defensively, I think. And trying to match someone up against Tommy Conroy and Aidan O'Shea, I think is going to be the biggest struggle for Terry Hyland to get right on the day, because Tommy Conroy has bulked up a lot. Obviously, Aidan O'Shea, playing against weaker teams, he does seem to dominate greatly against them in the full forward line. And you'd imagine that's where he'll start on Sunday. But yeah, listen, Leitrim, I suppose, as you said, if you're looking that way, again, at Corrigan Park, Leitrim were 10 points down at one stage and Kim brought it back to a point. So while they had the second half collapse against Louth, in the second half against Antrim, I suppose they did come back into it. But I think, listen, just the level they're playing at, I think no matter what team in Division 4 plays a team and operate in Division 1, Division 2, it's a real big ask to expect them to come out and perform on them one-off occasions and get a victory.
Yeah, I was just looking through, as you mentioned, some of the names for the scorers of each in the league, like Keith Byrne, who was Leitrim's top scorer in that match last year against Mayo. Dara Rooney, as I mentioned as well. Keegan, Mark or Michael Plunkett.
Mark Plunkett, yeah.
Mark Plunkett, yeah. And obviously, you touched on there, one name we've known for being a scoring press with Leitrim over the last couple of years was Ryan O'Rourke. He was fantastic in that promotion campaign from Division 4 2 years ago. Did notice his name never pictured a nice starting game in the league, as you touched on their fitness. Is it a fitness concern with Ryan going into the match on Sunday?
Yeah, there's been different rumours coming out. I've been chatting to different people. He was allegedly, or was supposedly here he was on the bench against Sligo and was supposedly fit to come on, and then he didn't feature at all against Louth and be at Antrim as well. So I'm not exactly sure what the situation is with him. I know he had a bad knee injury. I had been in touch with him last year actually after he'd done it, and we were trying to put him in the right direction to get in the right treatment. But I'm not sure if he was just trying to rush back for the league, and then be it when they lost to Sligo, we probably said, listen, the league's gone now, so I'll rest it up for maybe the championship match. But hopefully it'd be great to see him, because as you said, listen, in the year we did get promoted, he shot the lights out. He's been getting niggle injuries here and there, and he hasn't got a right run of it in championship. And it'd be a perfect opportunity for likes of Ryan, especially be it with the game on live on TV, just to showcase himself. And again, even likes of Keith and Dara there as well, because they are good footballers. And as you said, we're reading off stats and reading off papers and off social media of these lads, and nobody's ever really seen them in the flesh. So listen, that's another motivation for them lads, whether it's just get out themselves on an individual level and give it their best shot. But collectively, as a team, they'll just have to, everything will have to just go right for them on the day.
Yeah, I mentioned this game being on TV. It's probably the most exposure Leitrim will get since that Division 4 league final against Derry just over 2 years ago. Just on a Mayo kind of point of view, obviously they already have a game under their belt against Sligo. Obviously ended up being a very, very comprehensive victory that day in Markbridge Park, 323 to 12 points. Obviously a lot of the talk was dominated that two O'Connor brothers, particularly Killian long-term, weren't coming around. But the likes of Darren McHale, Tommy Conroy, as a touched on, Aidan O'Shea again showing how dangerous he can be a full forward. Ryan O'Donoghue chipped in with 5 points as well. Look, I suppose it's kind of hard to know what to make from that game, but overall, in general, what did you make of Mayo from that game?
Yeah, listen, as you said, it's very hard to know overall. It's job done, I suppose, it was for Mayo. But the likes of, Darren McHale, in fairness, I've seen him in the club championship a couple of times, but, he set the first 5 minutes and get 3 points in play scored, and he gave the Sligo centre back a torrid time, and I'm sure whoever he comes up from on Sunday will probably get as much, if not more, because the likes of them lads are pushing. They want to be starting. They want to be in Connacht finals, contesting again for All Ireland's. But I think it's definitely a positive. But again, it's very hard to judge them again at the level they're playing at. Tommy Conroy again last year showed brilliantly, and then when he got to the All Ireland final, he did struggle against Dublin. Obviously, you can see from his conditioning, he's definitely put a lot of work in over the last couple of months, and he's bulked up. And again, he is he's a very powerful runner at the minute. And then obviously Aidan O'Shea, he's done this before. He done it against Sligo a couple of years ago in a Connacht final. He scored 3 goals. He scored another 2, and he potentially could score again. But again, they're looking at the bigger picture, and it's against probably Galway. They're looking at, can these fellas stand up and be counted? And I suppose like Senda Hessian got his debut there last week, and I think he's in a Niall Murphy, and who Niall Murphy caused havoc in there at times last week. So that'll be another positive for Leitrim looking at them, and it'll be another concern for Mayo again in their full back line, because Niall Murphy could have had 1-2 or 1-3 scored after 10 minutes Sunday week ago here in Markbridge Park, and I suppose that's somewhere where Leitrim can exploit. But it's just a concern again for Mayo going forward. If they had 3 strong full forwards in against them, how they'll cope. So yeah, listen, it's the job done. The easier side of the championship draw here in Connacht. And again, it's another game for them lads to get under their belt for Leitrim, and I suppose, as I said, they'll be pushing for places then for a Connacht final. They'll be hoping.
Yeah, a lot was obviously made about King O'Connor's injuries going to be out for the rest of the year, and what he obviously brings with score tallies and everything else. Like, I was just looking at his 124 he racked up from his 3 and a bit games during the league. Counted for 26% of Mayo scores, which is a fair drop off from last year in the championship. He counts over 50. Now, you could say he didn't even see out a half against kind of Clare, but as I touched on there as well, with some of the names that popped up with big scores against Sligo, and like I said, like Tommy Conroy, the younger players kind of developing as well. And maybe as well, looking at the game last Sunday in the Hyde, while I know conditions weren't the best, Galway still would feel there's a big room for improvement. Would you still have Mayo, despite the loss for O'Connor, as the number 1 side in Connacht?
Just about. I think you're right. His loss is absolutely huge to Mayo. I think when I heard the news initially, I just thought that's Mayo's chances of All Ireland gone. And I suppose you can't say that with one player, but him definitely, his influence in Mayo is absolutely huge. It's probably greater than, maybe it's probably similar to maybe like some Michael Murphy and Donegal, but other than that, These other strong counties, they can cater for big losses, but I just think Mayo can't, and especially in that line of their team in their full forward line, where they have been limited enough since the likes of Andy Moore walked away as well. It's always the positions that they have been struggling to get scores, and Killian has always been the man for them to step up. So, yeah, listen, it's another opportunity for someone else to step in, but unfortunately, I don't think they have the caliber of footballer to fill his boots, should I say? And I definitely think I expect them to get through Leitrim on Sunday. I think it's going to be definitely potentially found out against Gaul in the Connacht final, and again, if not that, in an All-Ireland semi-final, potentially against Dublin. But I just think for them to really focus on winning All-Ireland, I think they can't do it without him.
Yeah, but one thing is for certain, you'll be fairly certain that they'll be in a Connacht final on the last Sunday in July. Rick Sundays, to call it down.
Yeah, listen, I think there's no question about the result. I just hope for Leitrim's sake that they go out, put in a performance to justify probably the efforts they've put in all year. And just listen, I know it's not a moral victory, but I was in Wexford Park last week for the Dublin-Wexford game, and I just seen how immensely proud Shane Roach was and the team afterwards. You could see they were walking off with their heads held high. I know albeit it was an 8-point defeat, but they were the closest any team have got to Dublin in the last number of years, and for them, they'll carry that on next year, hopefully into their qualifiers or into Division 4, and give them a bit of hope to get promoted. And it just takes that small little boost, and children on the pitch to see like the Wexford footballers competing against Dublin. It'll be the very same next Sunday. If for younger kids, for the younger generations, just to see Leitrim put in a competitive performance, I think that's all Terry can ask from the lads.
Yeah, 100%. Might just touch on some of the other games this weekend. I think it's 2 other games in each in Ulster and Munster. We'll start with Ulster, obviously, because they're a little bit attachment there yourself with being born in Donegal. Obviously, everyone's talking this up to be a potential banana skin against Derry on Sunday. Obviously, Donegal had that comprehensive victory against Down, probably as expected, in Park Esther a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, side concern Michael Murphy going to have injured, but Derry coming into this game in a really, really good place. Had a fantastic Division 3 league campaign, pretty much swiped all before them. But is it a case that they can carry that momentum and make a good game of this, or do you still think maybe the fact that these teams operated 2 divisions apart in the league could still tell come Sunday?
Yeah, the 2 divisions aspect definitely could tell. I seen Derry in the league final up against Offaly, and in fairness, they were sloppy enough at times that day. But as you said, throughout that league campaign, they've been racking up massive scores. They've some huge runners. Give Gareth McKinless at number 6 there. He absolutely tore Offaly apart down to with his runs coming from the centre half back. We've Conor Glass in midfield, McFall the wing forward. And obviously you have Shane McGuigan inside with Benny Heron. So they have definitely scoring forwards. They're athletic. The fitness levels seem to be a lot higher than other oppositions in Division 3. But again, they're operating now against a team that's been playing in Division 1, who've been caught out last year by Cavan, who definitely, I can't see them taking their eye off the prize this year. And they will have that little bit of, I suppose, nervousness going into it that they mightn't have had the one Ulster last year. So I think that'll work in Donegal's favour. And obviously the fitness of Michael Murphy will be huge, and whether he'll participate, and I suppose he's the only man that'll know that. But I think Rory Gallagher will be, he'll be relishing the challenge, because as you said, Derry can't be in any better position going into it. They can only beat the opposition they've been playing against, and it's a massive test for them lads. And as I said, from what I've seen of them and the way they've played, they definitely have the pace and power to match Donegal in terms of the physicality of Ulster football. But just whether the experience that Donegal have had over the last number of years will be a telling point. I just think Donegal won't get caught out like they did against Cavan last year, and that'll be a learning point for them going forward over the next number of years.
I think it was a big mistake for Donegal to play Michael Murphy against Down, given obviously he hadn't played the last couple of leagues. He was projected to be out for a couple of weeks. No disrespect to Down, but that was a game that Donegal would have been expected to win without him. And now with the quick turnaround, Derry, and if they win this, they're in an Ulster semi-final next week. That was a gamble. They should have said, look, maybe regardless of how good he was going training, he passed all the tests and everything else like that. But Down have been struggling poorly this year. If we can't beat him, if we can't beat Down without him, it's not really kind of a good sign.
Yeah, you can look at it that way, I suppose. And then the other side of it is I just think the hurt of the Cavan defeat last year, and that there's nothing guaranteed in Ulster Championship now. And I think even with Tipperary winning, I think the Declan Bonner probably looked at this and says, listen, there's no giving in Ulster, and we can't take any chances by leaving them out. And be it obviously then he pulled up again a wee bit, but I can understand where Declan came from in that scenario. I think that they just wanted to get through it, because they're definitely hurting since the Cavan defeat, and probably went in with that little bit of complacency into that Cavan Ulster final. I think he just didn't want that for that to happen a second time. So they obviously had to go with him. And listen, he is such an influential player. I think even his presence on the pitch, even whatever he does with the ball or without the ball, it's just having him there. He dictates everything. You can see that from him. It's just like, to me, he's probably nearly is the manager. You know, like he's literally running the show there. You can see the other lads getting the buzz off and that. So I just think he's such an important player. But in long term, it may backfire on them, and you'll see this weekend. Is the case of Donegal will be hoping to get out and put this game to bed early in some aspect and be able to rest them up again. Who knows? But I just know from watching, as I said already, Derry definitely have the energy and the fitness levels to last this out. But I hope for Michael's own sense that he'll be able to tog Sunday, because at the end of the day, there's limited enough amount of games this year and you want to see the best players playing every week.
Yeah, certainly as well, which given his age trajectory as well, it mightn't be too many more days we get to see him in Donegal.
Yeah,
well. You
definitely.
Never know. It's also the second game on television on Sunday as well. And being a local rivalry up there in the northwest, it should be a cracker match, fingers crossed. The other game on Saturday then sees the reigning champions Cavan come up against Tyrone, but like a similar situation in Munster, the reigning champions here again will be underdogs. Cavan, a really, really disastrous league campaign. No one foreseeing a relegation to the Division 14. Everyone expects them to bounce straight back up. Seeing with Pork Faulkner during the week was an interview saying that if they lose this game on Saturday, we regard it as one of the worst years in Cavan football, to go from such a high last year. And it goes to show, despite the fact that they're underdogs this game, they are under massive pressure still to get a result because of what happened in the league.
Yeah, it's been an incredible turnaround for Cavan. Like, to go from such a high, as you said, last November, December, or whatever it was, and then to go to get relegated to Division 4. I found it hard to believe, but I suppose the way the system was in the league this year, with the only 2 games or whatever it was, with the 3 games, had it been maybe the full group of 8, I don't think Cavan would have probably gone down. But it's just the way the draw went. But they'll be extremely disappointed to be relegated, and coming off that high buzz of winning an Ulster Championship. But to be drawn then against Tyrone, who in their own right are, I suppose, they're coming under a bit of pressure themselves with new management and that heavy defeat they had down in the league in Kerry. But again, Tyrone, Tyrone at the start of the year would have been one of your top 4, top 5 for an All-Ireland, and they have the calibre of players, Tyrone, to challenge for All-Ireland. So it's going to be very interesting to see what sort of work they've been doing in the last couple of weeks and where their head's at, because there's a bit of pressure on them, obviously, as well. So it'll make for an intriguing game with pressure coming from both camps, but in different ways, as you said, with Cavan, where they're at, and Tyrone just needing to step it up a bit. But again, I'd be very pushing towards a Tyrone win, because I know Cavan caused the shock last year. They did, even after getting relegated last year from Division 2 to 3. But I think that was just a once-off year, and everything that did happened. And I just think if Tyrone can click and get their forwards clicking, that they're well able of causing Cavan a lot of problems.
Where do you think Tyrone are at the moment? An indifferent league campaign, but as maybe is expected, like we see, take for instance a similar enough example, Stephen Kenny, Republic of Ireland, trying to employ a new positive style of football there, and that's certainly not kind of hit the ground running. Would you see it's going to be a similar comparison with Tyrone? It could take a while really for this new kind of brand that they want to play to gel in.
Yeah, listen, it's no more than that. It could, definitely going to take time, but at the same time, there's a lot of them players like Matty Donnelly, these lads, they're around a while now. They don't want to be leaving this for a couple of years. They still want to win an Ulster Championship. I still believe they're well capable of winning an Ulster Championship. I definitely think they have the players to match Donegal, if not better them. I think, normally you associate with Tyrone to have the athleticism, the physicality that could even challenge Dublin or Kerry. And I think, obviously, just seeing them on the TV that day against Kerry and how easy they conceded the goals, it just wasn't like them, But listen, it's better them sort of performances happening now and giving themselves chances to tweak it. And I'm sure the management team there in Tyrone have had that opportunity to analyse it with all their stats and available and everything you have now. You're in a prime position to sort out these issues, and whether it's defensively or whatever going forward. So it's just getting a mix for them to get that defensive shape while also getting their kind of long kick passing game going for the forwards in Tyrone, who, as I've mentioned a number of times, like, to have some serious firepower there and subs to come in. So yeah, listen, it'd be great to see Tyrone click as well, because I think they'll definitely give, whether it be Kerry or Dublin or Donegal, a massive run for their money, either in the Ulster or else be it All-Ireland series.
Would you say that the winner of the Ulster Championship is going to come on that side of the draw, or that Monaghan Armagh, which is going to be semi-final next week as well, that they're not just there to make up the numbers still?
Yeah, listen, it's going to be competitive, and that's going to be another good semi-final. Again, Armagh up and coming. They're potentially, listen, Antrim stuck with them at times there last weekend, but they obviously pulled through. And, Kieran McGinney should have massive work done there in the last number of years. And obviously Monaghan have young blood coming through as well, but they've been consistent as well in Ulster, and they'll be disappointed obviously after last year's defeat to Cavan. Yeah, listen, it's an open draw in Ulster, and we've seen that already last year. But I do definitely think that Donegal and Tyrone are still the two strongest in that side of the draw, and I think that I personally believe that the winner will come out of that semi-final or out of either one of them. And
yeah, we'll move on then to down south, and despite the fact that Tiptree Kerry is probably the meeting of the champions versus the favourites for that province, is it fair to say though, when it comes to competitiveness this weekend, that the Limerick Cork game probably looks the more tastier?
Yeah, definitely. I think in fairness to Limerick have made massive progress over the last 2 years since coming out of Division 4. Like to be in with I suppose they played, was it Derry in the league semi-final or this year to get up to get promoted. Like they're only a number of points away from getting up to Division 2. So I think hats off to Limerick, and it's very hard for junior counties like that when your hurlers are so strong to be, for children growing up, football's probably the second sport down there. And I says a huge admiration for lads like Ian Corbett and everybody's are plugging along for years down there. And they'll definitely fully believe going into that game against Cork, because Cork, we just don't know. There still hasn't been any consistency with Cork. Obviously, last year after them beating Kerry, we kind of thought, well, this is the year to make it on, but they haven't. And listen, I suppose they've probably in their own expectations haven't achieved what they would like to achieve, and have been hovering around Division 3 now for a couple of years. And I just think that definitely Limerick are well capable of causing a shock, but just whether, I just think Cork still will have enough to overcome them. But it'll definitely be a lot closer of a game than I can see between Kerry and Tipperary anyway.
Yeah, just on that game as well, even though it is in Thurles, and obviously it's going to be more of a crowd, we've seen it maybe recent games, I think somewhere up and around 3,500. It's still hard not to see that this game would probably end up in a similar way that the Kerry Clare game ends up a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, definitely. And if not, be a bigger winning margin for Kerry. I think, listen, we spoke there about Donegal getting caught last year against Cavan and Kerry now getting caught last year. When a thing like that happens, you come back definitely a lot more ruthlessness in you. And I can see Kerry now, there's going to be they'll definitely not be taking the eye off the ball. They're playing, in their eyes, they're playing the Munster champions. So, the likes of David Clifford and Sean O'Shea, these lads, they're going to be coming fully motivated. And I suppose the fact is, it is in Thurles as well, is adding to that too. So, I just think Kerry could potentially blow Tipperary out of the water here at the weekend. Tipperary are definitely coming in with very little confidence and have a very poor league campaign, be it I know the Munster last year. But yeah, Kerry, listen, if Kerry's forward line alone, if they click on the day in a big pitch like Thurles, they're going to cause Tipperary serious problems.
In terms of the Sam Maguire race, where do you rate Kerry? Still probably number 2 behind Dublin, would you say, or would you?
Yeah, well, after having watched Dublin last weekend, being a Wexford there, I don't know. It's very hard to judge Dublin off that basis. And I suppose we're looking at league form. Obviously, Kerry and Dublin early on in the year, Kerry put up 118 against Dublin, and it was 4-9. I think Dublin scored. So even in the amount of scores, I think if there's going to be a year, I think Kerry, I'm putting Kerry number 1 this year. I just think they have that extra edge on Dublin. I think their younger lads, the Kerry have coming through, are just starting to really, really peak. And the influence of Sean O'Shea, his progression, you can see even his strength as well. And just his natural ability now for kicking scores from play, and obviously Paddy Clifford. They just have they've a lot of options going forward, and I think the hurt of last year is just going to drive them on that extra little bit. And listen, obviously we can't write Dublin off, and if it's very harsh to say that, but Dublin, just looking at their bench the last day, they just didn't seem to have that killer instinct to come in off the bench as they used to have, and a lot of their obviously senior players are stepping away, but it's just they need a couple of other younger lads just to step into that role. But yeah, listen, if I was throwing all my eggs in one basket, I'd be throwing them in with Kerry.
Yeah, I mentioned about Dublin, some of the senior players stepping away. One, we don't really know what is going on, and we're less than 2 months away from an Ireland final. But Stephen Cluxon, it's not part of the panel, but not retired. It's kind of just dragging on at this stage now. I think everyone can just say more or less we're getting fed up with it.
Yeah, and that's it. I haven't really focused in on it. Listen, at the end of the day, it's his own personal decision. It's not going to affect my life up here in Sligo whether he goes or he doesn't. So I just think as a teammate, you'd expect that the boys would rather know. But listen, I'm sure Desi is that all boxed off. There's no way that's just been let fester within the squad, and there's coming to training at night, wondering this, wondering that. There's no question Desi is that sorted. And listen, you know yourself over the years with Dublin and the media, they're not going to give away stuff just for the sake of it. And listen, they keep things very private in house. I'm sure the whole panel of Dublin know what's exactly is going on, and that's all that matters to them. And the rest of it, outside the circle, like us speculating, I don't think it's going to have any effect on Desi or Stephen and whatever decision he decides to make. But again, for us, we all like to see him playing because listen, he's been one of a generation. But at the same time, they have a good keeper in Evan Comerford, and he deserves a bit of respect as well, and the opportunity again to prove himself as number one. And I suppose that'll be interesting to see what happens, whether Stephen does come back or not. But either way, I suppose all we can do is give the man his own space to make his own decision, and I suppose it's only affecting the Dubs rather than anyone else up the country.
Absolutely, yeah. Just maybe one last point just to finish up, because we've been hearing a lot of talk for the last couple of weeks. Anthony Cunningham, their Scotland manager, mentioned up about having no back door and it's not fair and everything else. I agree, because there's numerous counties now that are already out of the championship and they've only been back for 3 months this year. It's very, very short here. And I was even looking up a potential format where they could have squeezed in the back door. Yeah, it might involve, if you were to get knocked out and play in the first round of qualifiers and get to an Ireland quarter-final, semi-final, you could be playing 6-7 weeks in a row. But look, as you probably know yourself, you love playing games week in, week out because it makes training that bit easier during the week. And the provincial systems, last year they could all be ran off within 4 weeks. Why is there gaps this year? Why are Galway going 3 weeks now to the Connacht final, 2 or 3 weeks, and Munster and also just keep it going continuously? It could have been still done. It still could have been squeezed in, same time in the frame date, or maybe something like Enda McGinn, he said, why not have the Tailteann Cup still this year? Give these weaker counties, for some of them, an extra 2 or 3 weeks, more training, more football, and just broad out season, because club championships anyway aren't starting until the end of August, September anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm playing club football here now in Sligo, and Sligo were knocked out last week, yet the championship still isn't starting for potentially 8 weeks. Do you know what I mean? So it didn't make any sense in that. And I do think, again, I'm going back to, I suppose, Wexford last week were a prime example, coming off a defeat, be it only by 7 or 8 points to Dublin. The likes of them would have been in a great buzz going into a qualifier now, whoever they got, and it had been a home game against a team maybe Division 2. They would have fancied themselves after coming off the likes of that. But then on the other side of that, maybe teams like Sligo coming off massive heavy defeats. It's a chance for them as well, I suppose, to bounce back and leave maybe end the year in some bit of positive way, whether it's a better performance or even a better result and get a win somewhere and as you just get a run. But yeah, I think it is disappointing. Listen, there's a lot of training still being done this year, and competitively, like Leitrim, for example, played 3 league games, and then potentially 1 championship game. And I know there's a lot of COVID, but like them lads are doing a lot of training, individually on their own, for the sake of 4 games. It's just not enough, and 1 championship game in itself, it just isn't enough for them teams. And I definitely think they could have squeezed something in, because as you said, players just want to play games, and it's getting exposure to championship games is the biggest thing. And weaker counties aren't doing that, And I always say that, like teams like Mayo, a debut into Mayo's first year could play 7 or 8 championship games, potentially more than I played in 5 years playing for Leitrim. So that's massive experience and massive exposure for them lads to be getting, and it's very hard for teams in the weaker counties to get their players that exposure, amount of championship games and playing in front of crowds and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, listen, it is disappointing, but again, the GA make these decisions, and unfortunately we just have to roll with it.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what we say, it's set in stone now, but hopefully there might be better systems in place come the 2022 championship, and hopefully it'll be back to even form a normal league campaign that every county will be guaranteed at least 9 games. Emlyn, I think we've pretty much called it all there. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Perfect. Listen, great to have me on, and listen, hopefully we'll talk to you again in the near future.
Super stuff.